the sound came first. Not the quiet, steady beep of a machine doing its job, but the violent shriek of one announcing failure. Flatline. Then voices sharp and frantic, cutting through the fog. Pressure dropping. Code blue. Get crash cart. Stay with us, Sophia! I wanted to answer. But my body was already somewhere else. Distant, detached. The hospital ceiling blurred into an indistinct wash of white, like staring up at a winter sky too long. For one strange, suspended second, I felt weightless. Free. And then I heard the question. Has her family been contacted? Silence. The nurse's pause, sliced deeper than any scalpel could. Because I already knew the answer. 4 hours later, they appeared. My mother in her pressed blazer, my father tugging at his cufflinks, as if preparing for a board meeting. Their perfume and cologne clashed with the sharp sting of disinfectant in the ICU. Traffic was murder. My mother muttered, handing her handbag to a nurse without acknowledgement. She glanced at her reflection in the glass partition, fixing a smear of lipstick. And of course we couldn't leave Duchess at the spa. You know how she is about her grooming schedule. The nurse's jaw tightened. Mine did too. That was the moment I understood. Not for the first time, but with final, crushing clarity. That in my family's hierarchy of needs, I didn't even rank above the family dog. The next morning, sunlight blood into the sterile hospital room, harsh and merciless. I woke to find the world quiet again, except for the IV's gentle drip. My parents had stayed exactly 12 minutes. Long enough to be seen, long enough to absolve themselves of guilt. And then they'd vanished, swept away to champagne luncheons and charity meetings. The only trace they left behind was a half-empty cup of oat milk latte on the windowsill. The lipstick print wasn't mine. I stared at it for a long time. An absurd relic of the night I almost didn't make it. A night when their daughter flatlined while they discussed split ends at the pet spa. By 9 o'clock, my discharge papers were signed. The doctor wanted me admitted for observation, but I insisted on leaving. Hospitals were built for people with families hovering at their bedside, not for women like me who lay in silence. 12 years of counting the tiles on the ceiling while machines tried to remember what my body had forgotten. I signed my name with trembling fingers. Sophia Miller, age 26. Diagnosis lupus, advanced kidney failure. Condition stable for now. Stable. Such a fragile word. A 2. The apartment welcomed me with its familiar hum. The radiator clanking like an old man clearing his throat. The fridge muttering faintly from the kitchen. I sank into the couch, clutching a folder I hadn't dared open in months. The folder came from a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but my grandmother's. Eleanor Hayes had been gone 2 years now, but her shadow remained. Strong, uncompromising. She had been the only person in my family who ever looked at me without a trace of disappointment. For weeks, 12 years of. The envelope had sat untouched, its weight growing heavier on my coffee table each time I ignored it. But after last night, something shifted. I wasn't ready for answers, but I was done with silence. My hands shook as I slit the seal. Inside were neat stacks of documents and a letter, handwritten in her elegant script. "To my dearest Sophia, by the time you read this, I suspect you will have already learned the truth. They will never choose you. Not over comfort. Not over appearances. Not even over convenience. That is their failure. Not yours. You must choose yourself, child. And when the time comes, you will know how." I pressed the page to my chest and sobbed. Ugly, gasping sobs that came from a place deeper than grief. She knew. She had always known. The documents beneath the letter blurred through tears, but a few words leapt out like sparks in the dark haze foundation. Beneficiaries. Conditional inheritance. Neglect during medical crisis. It felt like a secret weapon humming in my hands. Not money, not power, but proof. Proof that my suffering hadn't been invisible. That someone had been watching, recording, believing me all along. Two weeks later, I found myself standing at the edge of a ballroom that shimmered like a dream. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across marble floors polished to a mirror's shine. Everywhere I looked, sequined gowns, champagne flutes, laughter loud enough to echo. Victoria's night. My sister floated across the stage in a gown the color of fresh blood, every movement rehearsed for maximum effect. Cameras adored her, influencers fawned, and at her feet sat Duchess, the golden retriever with a Swarovski collar that cost more than my monthly medication. Victoria Miller. The announcer boomed, on inspiration to millions. A voice of resilience. A champion for those who cannot fight for themselves. Applause thundered. Phones rose to capture every glimmer, every smile. And me? I stood at the back, half hidden in the shadows, clutching my grandmother's envelope inside my purse like it was oxygen. For years, I'd been trained to shrink, to make myself smaller so Victoria could shine brighter. But something in me had shifted since that hospital bed, since that letter. My pulse beat steady against the gauze on my wrist. I wasn't invisible anymore. Not tonight. Your parents must be proud. The MC grinned into the microphone. Tell us about your support system. Victoria. She tilted her head, rehearsed sincerity dripping from every syllable. Oh, I'm blessed. My parents are my rock. And as for siblings, well, I do have an older sister somewhere, but she's delicate. We try not to overwhelm her with these big events. Delicate. The word burned. My mother, beaming beside her, added, Victoria has always been like an only child in our hearts. Nothing has ever stopped her from chasing her dreams. I felt 200 faces turned toward the dark corner where I stood. Some searched, some whispered. One woman murmured, I didn't even know she had a sister. Invisible. Again. But not for long. The purse at my side felt heavy, the envelope inside vibrating with my grandmother's words. You must choose yourself, child. For 26 years, I had been their afterthought, their burden, their shadow. Tonight, under chandeliers that sparkled like a lie, I would become something else. 12 years of the applause still rang in my ears long after the lights dimmed. It didn't matter that the clapping wasn't for me. It never had been. Victoria was radiant under the chandeliers, her scarlet gown a perfect match for the cover of her latest book, displayed on banners around the ballroom. Living your best life. The irony was cruel, almost comic. 12 years of. Considering she had never lived a day without our parents cushioning her every stumble while I learned to survive my own collapse in silence. I lingered at the back, half hidden near the catering station. Servers weaved around me, trays of champagne flutes glinting like little gold prisons. I didn't touch a single glass. My body couldn't tolerate alcohol anymore, not with my kidneys crumbling piece by piece. Instead, I clutched water, the condensation dampening my fingers until it felt like even the glass wanted to slip away. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC declared, before we continue, let's hear from the people who shaped Victoria into the remarkable woman she is today. Her parents. The crowd erupted again. My mother glided across the stage, sequins scattering light like broken promises. My father followed. Years of. Stiff and authoritative, as if this were another board meeting. I knew the script before they even opened their mouths. Victoria has always been our miracle. My mother began, her smile rehearsed down to the last eyelash flutter. From the moment she was born, we knew she was destined for greatness. I wondered if she remembered the other moment. The moment she held my fevered hand when I was 7. The night my temperature spiked, so high the doctor warned it might fry my brain. 12 years of. Did she remember how she left halfway through the night because Victoria's ballet recital was the next morning, and my father said I would probably pull through? My father's voice cut in, low and commanding. Victoria embodies the values we hold dear: success, resilience, compassion. She has always put others before herself, especially family. A family. The word landed like a blow. I could feel my heart pounding, a drum bit against the gauze wrapped around my wrist. My grandmother's envelope pressed against my hip inside my purse. Proof, protection, possibility. But I wasn't ready, not yet. Not when every part of me wanted to scream. To walk onto that stage and hold up the medical records that said, cardiac arrest, while they toasted to book sales. Not when my body still trembled from weeks of near collapse. No. This moment wasn't about impulse. It was about timing. My grandmother had taught me that. Patience was a weapon. When the applause died down, the MC asked the question that had always been my family's favorite sleight of hand. Victoria, who do you credit most for your strength? Your parents are here, of course. But what about siblings? Her laughter filled the room, sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. Oh, I do have an older sister somewhere. Sophia. She's delicate, you know. We try not to overwhelm her with big events like this. Delicate. The word sliced through me like a scalpel, carving me into something fragile, pishable, disposable. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. People glanced around as if searching for a ghost. I felt their eyes graze over me and slide away, as if invisibility were contagious. She's always been like an only child to us. My mother chimed in, sealing the verdict with a smile. Victoria has never let anything hold her back from her dreams. And there it was, my erasure, live, streamed, archived forever on social media. A woman beside me whispered, not bothering to lower her phone. I didn't even know she had a sister. She never mentions her online. Probably jealous. Her friend replied. Imagine being Victoria's sibling. I tightened my grip on the glass until my fingers ached. It wasn't jealousy. It was grief, the kind that rotted from the inside. Grief for the family I'd never had. For the parents who'd raised 2 daughters but only ever celebrated one. Later, I slipped out to the balcony for air. The ballroom's laughter bled through the glass doors, muffled and unreal. Outside, the night pressed cool and heavy against my skin, the city skyline glittering like false stars. My reflection in the window startled me. Pale face, hollow eyes, the faint outline of a hospital bracelet still marking my wrist. I looked like someone half alive, someone waiting for permission to disappear. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I pulled the envelope from my purse and traced the embossed initials E.H. Eleanor Hayes. My grandmother's legacy. My lifeline. The letter crinkled as I unfolded it. The ink etched deep into the paper, as if she had wanted every word to last. True blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. Do not let them convince you otherwise. Years of. The weight of her words anchored me against the tide of voices, still echoing inside. I could almost feel her beside me. The way she used to sit at my bedside when I was little, brushing my hair back and whispering, "You are not fragile, Sophia. You are forged. Forged. Not delicate." A shadow moved at the edge of the balcony. I turned, startled. But it was only a man in a charcoal suit, lingering near the foundation's banner that had been draped across the ballroom wall inside. His gaze caught mine briefly before he returned to his phone. I didn't know him then. Not yet. But his presence felt deliberate, too calm for a party charged with Victoria's theatrics. I thought about calling my parents out right there, storming onto the stage and ripping the microphone from Victoria's manicured hands. But no. My grandmother had left more than words, she had left conditions. And conditions demanded witnesses. So I returned inside, blending into the crowd, becoming invisible once more. The applause roared as Victoria began her speech. She looked like a goddess, the scarlet silk clinging to her frame. Duchess perched obediently at her side. The image was flawless, the beloved author, the loyal dog, the glowing parents. A family portrait, carefully framed with me cropped out. Thank you all for being here tonight. She began, her voice dripping sincerity. As many of you know, 50% of my book's proceeds will go directly to kidney disease research. I almost laughed. The absurdity of it nearly doubled me over. Kidney disease research. She hadn't even been willing to get tested as a donor. The audience applauded, phones flashing. I pressed the envelope closer to my chest. She spoke of sacrifice, of resilience, of choosing your own family. Each word was a dagger, twisted with a smile. Then, with a flourish, her assistant wheeled out Duchess on a custom platform. The dog wore a new diamond collar spelling one word: survivor. My throat closed. The dog was the survivor. I was the liability. That was the moment something inside me shifted from grief to steel. 2. I didn't act that night. Not yet. I left the ballroom before the final toast. 12 years of. Slipping away like smoke while Victoria basked in the glow of applause she'd rehearsed her whole life for. But I went home, knowing one truth I had never let myself admit before. This wasn't just my sister's story anymore. It was mine. And the next chapter would not be written in silence. The city hummed beneath my apartment window. But inside, silence ruled. I sat on the floor with the envelope spread out before me. Papers fanned like a deck of cards that could change the game if I dared to play. Medical records. Foundation bylaws. Emails. My grandmother's handwritten notes in the margins. All of it a map pointing toward the same destination truth. But the truth, I knew, was a dangerous thing. Once unleashed, it could never be contained. I traced my finger over the clause that set my pulse racing every time I read it tore. Any beneficiary who abandons, neglects, or fails to provide reasonable support to immediate family during medical crisis shall forfeit all claims to the Foundation's assets. It was ironclad. Unambiguous. My parents and Victoria had already written themselves out with their absence, their indifference, their champagne toasts while I flatlined. So why did I hesitate? Because exposing them meant burning the last, fragile threads connecting me to something called family. Even rotten roots are still roots, and part of me feared the fall into complete aloneness once they were gone. My grandmother's letter lay at the top of the pile, her script steady, resolute. Tor, they will never choose you, Sophia. So you must choose yourself. The words echoed through me until they became a drumbeat. 2. The next day, I found myself in Dr. Martinez's office again. She adjusted her glasses as she flipped through my latest labs. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Your kidney function has dropped another 6% this month, she said gently. At this rate, dialysis isn't weeks away. It's days. My chest tightened. And a transplant. She hesitated. Immediate family is usually the first option. Parents, siblings. They're the best chance for a match. A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. They won't even get tested. You think they'll give me a kidney? Her eyes softened with something dangerously close to pity. Then we look at the registry. But time isn't on our side. I nodded. But the weight pressing down on me wasn't just medical. It was moral. 12 years of. How many more times would I let them walk away before I admitted what my grandmother had already known? 3 nights later, the phone rang. My mother's voice floated through, honeyed with concern that was too polished to be real. Sweetheart, we were thinking. Victoria's gala is next weekend. You'll come, won't you? It would mean the world to her. I almost hung up. Almost. But something inside me shifted instead. Yes! I said. My voice surprised even me. I'll be there. Wonderful. Relief sighed across the line. Wear something cheerful. We don't want you looking delicate. The word stung less this time. Maybe because I already knew what I was bringing with me. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom glittered brighter than I remembered. Like the universe had conspired to make Victoria's lie sparkle. She floated across the stage in a gown dripping with crystals, her smile wide enough to swallow the world. I stayed in the shadows again, envelope pressed close against my ribs. But tonight, the silence inside me wasn't hollow. It was waiting. When the MC asked the inevitable question about her support system, I expected Victoria's practiced dismissal. What I didn't expect was the escalation. "Oh, I have a sister," she purred, her gaze sweeping lazily across the room until it landed on me like a spotlight. There she is. 200 heads turned. The cameras followed. She's been fragile her whole life. Victoria continued, her voice a blend of pity and poison. We love her, of course. But sometimes you have to set boundaries with toxic people. Even family. The word toxic exploded in the air like a gunshot. Gasps. Murmurs. Fingers pointed. Phones raised higher. For a moment, the room spun. My knees wobbled, threatening to buckle. But then I felt it. The envelope, warm against my skin. My grandmother's words rising inside me like armor. I stepped forward. The crowd parted as I moved, the whispers swelling into a tide that pushed me closer to the stage. My heart thudded against my ribs, each beat a war drum. Victoria's smile faltered, just for a second. Then she recovered, her hand resting protectively on Duchess's jeweled collar. "Well, look who decided to join us," she cooed. "Everyone, this is my sister, Sophia. She's been through so much." The pity in her tone was worse than hatred. I reached the foot of the stage, microphone within arm's length. My fingers twitched. One move and the narrative could change. My mother's eyes narrowed from the front row, a silent warning. My father's jaw locked tight. They expected me to retreat, to shrink back into the shadows as I always had. But the shadows no longer fit. Family is everything, isn't it? I said. 12 years of. My voice louder than I imagined it could be. The microphone caught it, sent it ricocheting through the ballroom. A hush fell. Every camera lens swiveled. Victoria's smile froze, brittle as glass. That was the turning point. Not a scream, not a revelation. Just 5 quiet words that cracked the facade wide open. Family is everything. The weight of them settled over the room. Undeniable. Every guest who had whispered about my invisibility now stared, waiting. I glanced at my mother. Her hand tightened on my father's arm. My father's eyes darted toward the exits. And Victoria? She paled beneath the layers of contouring, her lips parting soundlessly. I had shifted the script. For the first time in 26 years, the story wasn't hers to tell. Backstage later, she cornered me. Her perfume was sharp enough to sting, her nails digging into my wrist. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "Supporting my sister's big night." I murmured, meeting her eyes with a calm I didn't feel. "Cut the act." "Sophia, why did you mention grandmother?" The envelope pressed against my ribs like a heartbeat. She didn't know. Not yet. But she sensed it. The power I carried. "You'll find out," I said softly. Her nails dug deeper. "Don't you dare ruin this for me." "Funny," I said, pulling free. "That's exactly what grandmother warned me you'd say." Her face drained of color. And in that moment, I knew the turn had already begun. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake in the silence of my apartment, staring at the ceiling, my body aching but my mind ablaze. For years, I had begged for scraps of love. For years, I had played the role of the fragile sister, the delicate one, the burden. But the moment I spoke into that microphone, something fractured, or maybe something healed. Either way, I was no longer invisible. And invisibility had always been their greatest weapon. The days after the gala stretched like a taut wire, humming with unspoken threat. I had stepped into the spotlight, even briefly. And my family wasn't used to shadows shifting. My phone filled with messages, some supportive, most curious. Strangers who had seen the live stream reached out. "You were so brave." Finally someone said it. But their encouragement only deepened my unease. Brave. Of. All I'd done was ask a question. I hadn't revealed the real ammunition yet. The envelope remained on my nightstand, its edges softening as if absorbing the heat of my hesitation. Every night, I told myself tomorrow would be the day I acted. Every morning, fear whispered, "What if they're right? What if I really am toxic, dramatic, ungrateful?" And yet, another voice, my grandmother's, pressed harder. "Do not let them write your story for you." 2. At dinner 2 nights later, my parents invited me to their apartment. I knew better than to expect warmth, but I went anyway. The itch of wanting to be chosen hadn't fully died. The dining room was staged like always. Gleaming silverware, wine glasses tall enough to reflect chandeliers. Duchess curled at Victoria's feet on a velvet cushion. "You embarrassed us," my father said before I'd even sat down. No preamble. No smile. My mother's voice was smoother, but the words cut deeper. "Sophia, you need to understand. These events aren't the place to air family tensions." Tensions? My laugh cracked in the middle. "You called me toxic. On stage. In front of 200 people." Victoria tilted her head, fox innocence painted across her face. I was speaking my truth. Isn't that what empowerment is all about? Her words slid like oil across the tablecloth. My grandmother's envelope weighed heavy in my bag. I considered pulling it out right then, laying the truth across the linen, but something stopped me. They weren't ready, and neither was I. Instead, I pushed back from the table. "Enjoy your meal." My chair scraped loud against the marble floor. Duchess barked once, sharp and jarring, as if punctuating the moment. 2 later that week, Dr. Martinez called me in again. She didn't soften her tone this time. "Sophia, your numbers are plummeting. We're out of cushion. Dialysis must begin within days." My chest hollowed. "And the transplant list?" She hesitated. "It's long. Years, usually. Immediate family remains the fastest route. If they won't." My voice cracked, but I forced the words out. "They won't even take a test." Dr. Martinez folded her hands. "Then, Sophia, you need to decide how much longer you want to wait for them to be who you wish they were." The word slammed into me. Decide. How much longer? It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about whether I would keep bleeding hope for people who fed me only neglect. I left her office shaking, my grandmother's voice chasing me down the hallway. "They will never choose you." The second gala came faster than I expected. Another event, another stage for Victoria to shine. This time, the banners read, "Victoria Miller Redefining Resilience." Resilience. I wanted to laugh until I broke. I wasn't supposed to attend, but my feet carried me there anyway, each step heavier than the last. Inside, the crowd buzzed brighter, larger than before. Influencers streamed, reporters hovered near the stage, and the air itself pulsed with spectacle. My parents stood front and center, champagne already in hand. I melted into the corner again, but this time my purse wasn't just a purse. It was a vault, heavy with documents, letters, proof. Tonight could be the night. 2. The MC began, his voice booming. "Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria Miller has once again shown us that adversity can be turned into triumph. Let's hear her story of resilience." Victoria stepped forward, her smile polished like crystal. Duchess followed obediently, diamond collar spelling survivor brighter than before. My family understands sacrifice. Victoria began, her eyes glistening with rehearsed tears. We know what it means to support one another through hardship. Support. The word lodged in my throat like glass. She gestured to me deliberately this time. Even my sister Sophia, though she struggles, has taught me so much about boundaries, about how to keep shining, even when people try to drain your light. Gasps, murmurs. Phones rose higher. She had done it again. Weaponized my illness, my existence, my silence. And silence was no longer an option. 2. I didn't walk to the stage this time. I climbed. Each step heavy, deliberate. My grandmother's words a rhythm under my breath. Choose yourself. Choose yourself. Victoria's smile faltered. Sophia? She said brightly, voice pitched too high. So glad you're here. Everyone. Let's welcome my delicate sister. I'm not delicate. My voice cut through the microphone like a blade. The ballroom hushed instantly. 200 faces turned. My father's grip tightened on his glass until it cracked. My mother's lips thinned, a silent warning. But I kept speaking. I coded last month. 90 seconds without a heartbeat. My parents arrived 4 hours late because Duchess had a grooming appointment. The words hung in the air, electric. Cameras tilted, whispers surged. Victoria laughed brittle. She's confused. Hospitals can be disorienting. No. My hand tightened on the envelope inside my purse. I'm not confused. I'm done being silent. But backstage chaos erupted after my words. My mother cornered me, her voice sharp as glass. You will ruin us, she hissed. You ruined me first, I whispered back. Victoria's nails dug into my arm. If you mention grandmother, I swear. But her threat died as a man stepped forward from the shadows. The same man I'd seen on the balcony. Charcoal suit, immaculate, eyes steady. Miss Miller. His voice was quiet but firm. Michael Chen. Executor of the Hayes Foundation. My stomach flipped. He reached into his briefcase, sliding me a card. Your grandmother anticipated this night. Everything is documented. When you are ready, the board is here. The board. Witnesses. My grandmother's plan crystallized in that moment. This wasn't about survival. It was about justice. Victoria's face drained of color. My mother's lips parted. For once without words. My father's hand trembled around his glass. The envelope in my purse seemed to pulse with heat. The choice was mine. I walked back toward the ballroom, Michael's card heavy in my palm. Behind me, I could hear my sister's hissed words, my mother's frantic whispers, my father's threats. Ahead, the crowd waited. Restless, hungry. Phones were out, lenses pointed, ready to capture a story. And for the first time in my life, I realized the story didn't belong to them. It belonged to me. All I had to do was open the envelope. But opening it meant ending everything I had once begged for: their approval, their acceptance, their love. The stage lights blazed, the MC calling for questions from the audience. My heartbeat thundered. This was the edge, the precipice. One more step and there would be no going back. The ballroom glittered, but silence had replaced applause. Every phone was raised now, not to celebrate but to record. I stepped onto the stage. My hands shook, but my voice did not. My grandmother, Eleanor Hayes, left something for nights like this. From my purse, I drew the envelope. Gasps rippled as the embossed initials EH caught the light. Victoria lunged, her manicured hand snatching for it, but Michael Chen was faster. He stepped forward, his briefcase snapping open with surgical precision. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, calm as thunder. As executor of the Hayes Foundation, I am authorized to confirm these documents. Papers spread across the screen behind us as projectors lit up. Not Victoria's slideshow of curated perfection, but hospital records, security footage, emails. April 15th, 3:47 p.m. Code blue. My name on the chart. Cardiac arrest. 90 seconds. Split screen my parents and Victoria. Champagne in hand at Precious Paws Pet Spa, toasting a golden retriever. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, disbelief. Cameras zoomed in on my mother's frozen face, on my father's clenched fists, on Victoria's mouth opening and closing without sound. Family, I said into the microphone, does not choose a dog's haircut over a heartbeat. Applause broke like a tidal wave. But this time it wasn't for Victoria. Victoria's voice cracked through the noise. This is slander. She's manipulating you? Michael clicked again. Emails filled the screen. Can't visit Sophia. Duchess has a play date. Hospital visits are triggering for my anxiety. If she cared, she wouldn't guilt trip us with her illness. Then the will appeared. My grandmother's handwriting projected larger than life. For any beneficiary who abandons immediate family during medical crisis forfeits all claims. Effective immediately. Michael declared, his voice slicing through the chaos. Sophia Miller is the sole beneficiary of the Hayes Foundation. Victoria Miller is permanently disqualified. The applause swelled again. But this time it was edged with fury. At them, not me. Victoria stumbled, clutching Duchess like a shield. My mother reached for the microphone, but the crowd's outrage drowned her out. You've always been sickly, she shouted, desperate. We've done our best. No. My voice cut clean. You did what was easiest, and tonight that ends. The spotlight, once Victoria's, now seared into me. For the first time, I didn't shrink. I held the letter high, my grandmother's words blazing on the screen. Tall blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. And in that moment, I chose myself. The ballroom roared. Victoria crumpled. My parents paled. Duchess slipped from her arms and padded to my side, tail wagging. Even the dog knew the truth. The sound of applause faded slowly, like a storm retreating over the horizon. When it finally stilled, what remained was a ballroom heavy with consequence. My parents were escorted out first. Faces pale, shoulders rigid, clinging to dignity, as though it could cover the rod of neglect, now exposed. Victoria stumbled after them. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, Duchess's leash limp in her hands. But Duchess wouldn't follow. The dog sat planted at my side, chest heaving, eyes watchful. Even an animal could sense when loyalty had been misplaced. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing. Microphones raised like weapons. Questions overlapped. About fraud, about family, about the hypocrisy of resilience as a brand. Michael Chen blocked them with the precision of someone who had prepared for years. Not tonight, he said firmly, shepherding me toward the side exit. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow the world will feast. And they did. Pope. By morning, headlines screamed from every screen. Golden child exposed. Victoria Miller's charity a fraud. Parents toast dog while daughter flatlines. Sep Duchess Gate. When image matters more than life. The clips from the gala trended across platforms. My voice, steady for once, played on loop. Family does not choose a dog's haircut over a heartbeat. The internet crowned me both victim and survivor. Stuff! Strangers wrote paragraphs about their own toxic families, about siblings who had been chosen over them, about parents who had never showed up. My inbox swelled with confessions. But the noise couldn't touch the quiet inside me. For the first time in 26 years, that quiet wasn't emptiness. It was space. Weeks blurred. Legal teams swept through the wreckage of Victoria's empire, pulling apart false charities, tracing diverted funds. Publishers sued. Sponsors withdrew. Her followers plummeted by the hour, each unfollow a nail sealing the coffin of her curated persona. My parents fared no better. Their social clubs expelled them. My father's clients evaporated. Their house, once the monument of appearances, now hung under foreclosure. And me? I began dialysis. But this time I didn't walk into the clinic alone. Nurses greeted me by name, not with pity, but with warmth. Michael introduced me to the Hayes Foundation board. Dr. Wang clasped my hand and said, "You've already done more for patients tonight than most do in a lifetime." The first grant, check I signed, went to Mercy General for patient support programs. The second to a lupus research center. The third to a fund for travel assistance. So no one would have to take an Uber alone to chemotherapy again. Every signature steadied me. Every dollar turned the weight of neglect into the fuel of compassion. 6 months later, the office walls were lined with photos, patients, holding giant checks, families smiling, board members standing proud. 53 grants funded. 53 second chances. My kidneys were still failing, but my spirit had steadied. I was no longer a shadow trailing behind someone else's spotlight. I had become a torch. One afternoon, a young woman named Jennifer arrived with her teenage daughter. The girl's wrists were thin, hospital bracelets digging into her skin. "She has lupus," Jennifer whispered, her voice cracking. "Her father hasn't visited in years." I leaned forward, meeting the girl's tired eyes. "Sit down," I said softly. "Tell me your story." As they spoke, I thought of my grandmother, of her letter, of how she had seen through the lies long before I ever dared. She hadn't just left me money. She'd left me permission. Permission to stop begging for scraps. Permission to walk away. Permission to choose myself. Sometimes, late at night, I still felt the ache of what never was. The little girl in me still wished for parents who would sit at her hospital bed, still longed for a sister who would show up with soup instead of selfies. But grief, I was learning, could be alchemized. Not erased, but reshaped. At the gala's anniversary, I stood in a smaller ballroom, this time surrounded not by influencers but by survivors. Patients whose families had abandoned them. Mothers who had sat through chemo alone. Children who had been forgotten in waiting rooms. We toasted not to resilience as a performance, but to presence as a practice. "To the ones who show up," I said, raising my glass of water. "Always to the ones who show up." The applause was quieter than the chaos of that first night, but infinitely louder in my heart. I never heard from my parents again, except through the grapevine. They sold their jewelry, their cars, even Victoria's gowns to cover legal fees. They moved into a cramped apartment across town. Their faces, once plastered across social pages, faded into obscurity. Victoria tried to stage a comeback, a podcast, a memoir, a tearful interview about being betrayed by family. But the internet has a long memory, 12 years of, and her face will forever be linked with the footage of a dog wearing a survivor collar, while her sister coded in a hospital bed. Even Duchess, somehow, ended up with me. Papers were signed quietly through an animal rights group. The day she arrived, she bounded into my arms as if she'd been waiting her whole life. She sleeps at the foot of my bed now, loyal in a way no human blood relative ever managed to be. 2. In my office. 12 years of. Above the desk, stacked with grant applications, hangs a framed line from my grandmother's final letter. "Your blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. I see it every morning. I breathe it in like scripture." Because she was right. Family had been a word my parents wielded like a weapon, a leash, a stage prop. But family, real family, was simpler. It was the nurse who stayed past her shift to hold my hand. It was the doctor who refused to sugarcoat the truth. It was the board members who listened when I spoke. It was a golden retriever who chose me without hesitation. It was me choosing myself. One night, 12 years of, I dreamed of my grandmother. She was sitting at the edge of my hospital bed, stroking my hair like she used to. Her presence steady, undeniable. "You see," she whispered in the dream. "You were never fragile. You were forged." When I woke, I wasn't crying, I was smiling. 2. I won't pretend the story ends neatly. My kidneys are still failing. Some mornings the fatigue drapes over me like a lead blanket. Some nights I wonder how much longer I can fight. But here is what I know: I am not alone anymore. And even if my parents never chose me, I have been chosen 1,000 times since. By patients, by survivors, by strangers who write, "Your story saved me." So I keep going. I sign another grant. I listen to another story. I build a family, one act of loyalty at a time. 2. If you've read this far, if you've ever been told you are too much, too sick, too inconvenient, hear me now. You are not a burden. You are a person, and you deserve to be chosen. When the people meant to love you prove themselves incapable, believe them, and then choose yourself. Because the only loyalty worth clinging to is the kind that shows up when the machines start beeping, when the IV drips run dry, when silence feels unbearable. That is family, and I have found mine.